Welcome to the Positive Apocalypse Trilogy. I'm Major Tom. This is Book 1, Birth Pangs of the End Times, Chapters 3 and 4.
Chapter 3, A Fresh Start, 2 Rules for Life. Ketchikan, Alaska, Monday, August 22nd, 2016. After an instant oatmeal and coffee breakfast, Andy drove Katie to Ketchikan High School 30 minutes before the first school bell rang. They hoped to enroll her early before she missed any orientation classes for new students. In the school office, Andy and Katie met Assistant Principal Susan Mitchell. She seemed suspicious when this red-haired, blue-eyed Irishman said he wanted to enroll his teenage Native American niece in school. Then Andy handed her his legal guardianship paper. As Ms. Mitchell reviewed Andy's guardianship, Katie observed Ms. Mitchell didn't have a wedding ring. She wore vintage pointy glasses from the 1960s, and her tidy hairstyle and priggish wardrobe suggested she wasn't concerned about being attractive. She was friendly and polite, but the pitch of her voice had a slightly dissonant quality to it. Satisfied with Andy's legal guardianship, she gave Katie an enrollment document. Pointing at an adjacent room, she said,
"Katie, please take a seat in there and choose your 11th grade elective classes. Then I'll make up your class schedule."
As they waited for Katie's choices, Ms. Mitchell said,
"I can't help but ask, how did you become Katie's uncle and guardian?"
Andy looked her in the eye.
I married Katie's aunt, her mother's sister. My wife Sarah and Katie's parents were killed in a plane crash after a potlatch celebrating my adoption into the clan. Katie and I were the only survivors.
Oh, that's terrible. So sad.
Andy could see from her expression that she wanted to know more. She leaned toward him expectantly, like Buster did when he wanted another scrap of meat, but she was polite enough not to ask, and he didn't offer. Katie returned and gave her elective choices to Ms. Mitchell. After 10 minutes, she gave Katie a copy of her Monday through Friday class schedule, with the times and room numbers for each class.
Okay, Katie, I'm going to put you in Mrs. Henderson's homeroom. She's also a proud Native American from the Junican people.
Katie smiled, but she was thinking, I'm glad she's not a Clinatalk, or she'd know all about me. With everything arranged, Uncle Andy left her in Miss Mitchell's care.
I'll be back at 3:30 to pick you up.
With a wave and a smile, Katie felt a sense of relief as she began to blend in as just another high school student. Ms. Mitchell led Katie down 2 hallways to her homeroom, where Mrs. Henderson, Katie's homeroom teacher, was taking attendance and asking students to introduce themselves. Perfect timing. Entering, Ms. Mitchell said,
Sorry to interrupt.
Katie scanned the classroom as the principal handed Mrs. Henderson Katie's enrollment information. Katie's initial impression of Mrs. Henderson was that she was efficient, caring, and professional, with a pleasant, feminine voice. In contrast to Miss Mitchell, she wore a wedding band, and her black hair was styled in a neat French braid. Her outfit included a blouse, skirt, and shoes that complemented each other perfectly. Gesturing toward Katie, Mrs. Henderson addressed the class.
This is Katie Whitefeather, who just signed in this morning. Welcome, Katie. Please take any seat you like.
Katie forced a smile toward Mrs. Henderson and toward the unfamiliar faces in the classroom. As she found a place to sit, 4 of her classmates returned her smile. After her first day of school, Katie saw Uncle Andy's dented truck in the lane where parents picked up their kids in front of the school. He was 6 cars back. The first 5 cars were new-looking minivans and sport utility vehicles. Contrasting with these nice vehicles was Andy's old truck. Another girl her age would have been embarrassed by this apparent social incongruity, but not Katie. I'm just glad to be here in this school, and I'm glad Uncle Andy cares about me. Besides, he's an Alaskan bush pilot, and that's so cool, so who cares what he drives? Katie waited under the awning, protected from the rain, until 5 parents picked their kids up at the curb. When it was her turn, she eagerly hopped into the truck. Inside, it smelled of oil and wet dog. Buster, as always, greeted her with boundless energy, wagging his tail and giving her loving licks that always made her happy. She hugged and petted him in return. She barely heard the drizzle hitting the truck's roof, but one wiper squeaked every 2 seconds to remind them it was raining. As he drove away, Andy said,
How was your first day?
"Pretty good. I didn't know anybody, and my teachers all seem nice. I'm really glad to be here."
That's great. If you feel up to it, we're going to need more groceries now that we've got 2 mouths to feed. I thought I'd wait so you could help choose what we'll eat.
Okay, sounds like fun. When they arrived at Andy's cabin, they unloaded their groceries, then they sat to relax with a cup of hot tea. "Uncle Andy, I really appreciate you letting me live here with you. I've been thinking. I want you to tell me what I can do to earn my keep for the next 2 years.
That's very mature of you, Katie. What household things do you like to do?
At Auntie's, I helped her cook, clean, and do the laundry.
Yes, but what things did you enjoy doing more than others?
I don't really like to cook. I'd rather do the cleaning chores, washing the dishes, house cleaning, and doing laundry."
Okay, that sounds like a good arrangement. I'll do the grocery shopping and cooking if you'll do the dishes, cleaning, and laundry.
"It's a deal." Andy laughed. Both sipped their tea. Andy's 2 rules. A few minutes later, Andy said,
While we're having this discussion, let me share my house rules.
Katie cringed inside. "Uncle Andy seems so nice and supportive, but I really don't know him very well. I know he's religious, so what kind of rules will I have to submit to in order to keep living here? I have nowhere else to go." She looked down at her tea.
But before I tell you my 2 rules, let me ask you 2 questions. First, who is your God? And second, what is the standard you live your life by?
Strange. What kind of questions are these? Before she could answer, he said,
I know these are heavy-duty questions, so let me tell you how I'd answer them. I would say, my God is Yahweh, who includes the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit and the Bible are my standards to live by. So, how would you answer these 2 questions?
Andy waited as Katie deliberated for a full minute. Then she said, "I've gone to Pastor David's church in Catan, off and on for 8 years, so I know the right things to say. But the truth is, I don't know God the way you and Pastor David do. You know how God has already saved me from death a few times in my life, so I believe He'll lead me to find the answer to these questions in my future."
Thank you, Katie, for that honest answer. I'm glad you didn't give me a religiously correct answer, but you told me the truth. And Jesus agrees with you. He said if you follow the truth, it will lead you to know Him. So, here are my house rules. They're simple, and there are only 2.
He held up one finger.
First, do everything as unto the Lord.
Then, holding up 2 fingers, he said,
Second, choose to follow the truth in every situation.
He took a sip of tea.
I believe you're already following these 2 rules, so just keep walking on the path you're already on.
Relieved, Katie thought. "No problem. I can follow these 2 rules." Katie said, "I will." Buster moved to sit next to Katie, looking up at her. His eyes said, "Pet me." She smiled and complied. Andy concluded,
Finally, for your benefit, I'd ask you to attend church services regularly. Whether it's in my church or somewhere else is your choice. This isn't a rule, simply a request.
Smiling, she said, "I will. Thanks." October 11th, 2016. As Katie entered the bustling high school cafeteria, 100 teenage voices blended into an unintelligible, chaotic cacophony. She'd just left a social studies class where a heated debate on personal choices and morality erupted. The topic was too close, too raw for her to take part. Words like rights, choices, and freedom bounced around the room, each one a sharp jab to her conscience. She didn't want to hear their theoretical debate. She wanted to rush out of the class, but such odd behavior would have raised inconvenient questions, so she stayed there and suffered through their philosophical discussion. With only a small salad and water on her tray, Katie sought solace in a remote corner. She observed groups of her peers chatting, debating, and enjoying themselves without a care in the world. She still felt like an outsider, different from her classmates. After what she experienced only 2 months before, she couldn't identify with their lightheartedness and carefree laughter. As an introvert, she didn't mind not having many friends, especially since most of her peers were silly and shallow. But 1 or 2 like-minded friends would be nice. As her gaze fixed on her untouched salad, her mind returned to the memory she wished she could erase. It was vivid: the sterile smell of the clinic, the cold metal table, the evil sound of the vacuum. She remembered feeling alone, and so violated. Tears welled up in her eyes as she relived the despair that engulfed her after it was over. She felt hollow, as if part of her soul had been sucked out. Guilt overwhelmed her, a secret burden she carried in silence. She buried it deep, but like a demon, it emerged to torment her whenever it wanted. A sudden laugh from a nearby table jolted Katie back to the cafeteria. She wiped her eyes, hoping no one noticed. "I'm so alone, even in this crowded room." Mrs. Henderson sat down beside Katie, her presence a gentle intrusion. She said,
Is everything all right, Katie? You seem a bit distant today.
"She seems genuinely concerned." Katie managed a nod and a weak smile. "Just a lot on my mind, I guess." Mrs. Henderson nodded with understanding.
Sometimes the weight of our past can feel overwhelming. Remember, each day is a chance to begin anew. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it and grow.
Katie's jaw clenched. "Oh, God." Katie panicked. "Does she know? She must know somebody from Catan. Who else knows?" Katie calmed herself. "Whatever Mrs. Henderson knows, she isn't judging or condemning me. She only wants to encourage me and give me hope. She won't tell anyone." The bell signaled the end of the lunch period. As she stood, Mrs. Henderson placed a reassuring hand on Katie's shoulder.
You're a good person, and you've got a bright future ahead of you, so always remember that.
Katie's face brightened with gratitude. She looked up and their eyes met. Katie smiled. "Thanks." As students filed out of the cafeteria, Katie lingered, lost in thought, with Mrs. Henderson's words echoing in her mind. "I can't change the past, but I can learn from it." As Katie stood, she felt a subtle shift within her. The burden of her secret remained. But now she felt a faint whisper of something new, a desire to heal, forgive herself, and begin anew with a fresh start. She left the cafeteria, carrying the weight of her past, but also the hope of a new future. June 7th, 2018. Katie graduated in the middle of her high school class. While honor students excitedly compared acceptance letters from prestigious colleges, Katie quietly submitted her Army enlistment paperwork. Her test scores qualified her for the Army's High School to Flight School program. This would enable her to go straight to warrant officer flight training after boot camp. Basic training. Snow-blanketed Fort Polk, Louisiana, when Katie arrived for boot camp. The icy wind cut through her camouflage green battle dress uniform as she did push-ups in the frozen mud. Drill sergeants screamed in her face as she crawled under barbed wire, climbed rope obstacles, and learned infantry tactics. Her drill sergeant bellowed,
"You're too slow, Whitefeather! My grandma can crawl faster than you!"
She gritted her teeth and crawled faster, ignoring the sting of ice-cold mud soaking through her uniform. By graduation day, 9 weeks later, Katie could run 5 miles wearing combat boots and complete the obstacle course carrying full battle gear. U.S. Army Aviation Center. Next, Katie started flight school at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Instructors drilled aviation regulations and procedures into the student pilots' brains. Everything had to be done, exactly, using a checklist. Her instructor warned,
If you do this checklist from memory, you'll fail. Read every line, every time.
Katie learned aerodynamics, aircraft systems, weather, navigation, instruments, and emergency procedures. She practiced single-engine operations, loss of tail rotor, and hydraulic failure procedures in the simulator until her responses became automatic. With her instructor in the helicopter, she learned how to hover, fly the aircraft around the heliport's traffic pattern, and auto-rotate in case both engines failed. Finally, after 6 weeks of dual instruction, her instructor stepped out of the UH-72 Lakota helicopter, simply saying,
"You're ready. She's all yours. Take her around the pattern 3 times.
Katie's heart raced as she watched her instructor walk away, leaving her at the controls, alone. The familiar vibrations came alive under her feet as the rotor blades spun overhead. She felt butterflies in her stomach as she pulled pitch, lifting the helicopter into a hover. The sophisticated helicopter responded to her every command. With no instructor beside her to grab the controls if she made a mistake, every sensation felt heightened. The smooth responsiveness of the controls, the whine of the twin turbines, the sound of rotor blades chopping through the air overhead. Her hands trembled slightly on the controls, but her training took over. After the tower cleared her for takeoff, she commanded the aircraft up and away into the crystal blue Alabama sky. A huge grin spread across her face. Each movement of her hands and feet translated directly into the helicopter's motion. No intermediary, no instructor, just her and the machine dancing together in the morning air. This was even better than she'd imagined. Looking down at the patchwork of fields and forests below, Katie felt a deep sense of rightness. This was what she was meant to do. The thrill of flight, mixed with the technical precision required to control the aircraft, fit her perfectly. In this moment, all her struggles and hard work to get here were worth it. As she hovered back to the helicopter's parking spot, Katie knew she'd found her calling. 9 months after starting flight training, Katie pinned on warrant officer bars and Army aviator wings. She graduated in first place in her class of 47. In the audience, her Uncle Andy beamed with pride. As the honor graduate, she got first choice of the available transitions for her class. Most of her classmates wanted to fly Apache gunships or Chinook heavy-lift helicopters, but Katie wanted to become a medevac pilot. Her choice resulted in her staying at Fort Rucker for the 6-week UH-60 Blackhawk transition course, learning formation flying, night vision goggles, and combat tactical procedures. Finally, with her Blackhawk qualification complete, Katie reported to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, for 4 weeks of medevac pilot training. After Fort Sam Houston, she returned home to Ketchikan for 2 weeks of leave before her first duty assignment as a combat medevac pilot in Kyzyrstan. Forward Operating Base Freedom, Kyzyrstan, December 29, 2020. Katie saturated her memory for 2 full days in her squadron's library room, cramming standard operating procedures, SOPs, into her brain. She pored over local maps, studied enemy threats, and memorized local flight procedures until her brain could absorb no more. That's enough for today. I'm tired, bored, and hungry. It's time for supper. She put her winter parka and xylovirus mask on, then walked out into the bitter cold, dry wind, joining the throng of soldiers heading, from all directions, toward the crowded squadron mess hall. At least this mask covers my face from this icy wind. After entering the mess hall, she unzipped her parka. The warm, comforting scent of roast beef and carrots filled her nose as she made her way to the stainless steel cafeteria line. She selected a fried codfish fillet, a fluffy baked potato, crisp green beans, and sweet tapioca pudding from the array of options. She topped off her meal with tartar sauce, malt vinegar, a pat of butter, freshly diced chives, and a mug of peppermint tea. Just like home. When she looked around for a table, she heard someone yell,
"Hey, Whitefeather, come on over here and sit with us."
She felt like everyone in the building was looking at her. Katie recognized 3 pilots from her squadron who were calling and waving at her to join their table. She hadn't met them yet, but she'd seen them around the squadron. Katie was conflicted. She was alone in a foreign country that differed from her home. Instead of her green and wet home, this place was brown and dry. And not only was she the only female officer in the squadron, she was also the youngest, lowest ranking, and a Native American. All this made her feel different, uncomfortable, and vulnerable. She never liked casual chit-chat. It would be nice to have at least one friend, but she didn't really want to join this group of rowdies. But now that they've so publicly invited her and they knew she'd heard them, it would be rude to sit somewhere else. So, she surrendered to peer pressure. As she arrived at their table, she noticed they'd already eaten. Their trays contained only the scraps they planned to discard as they exited.
Welcome.
The loud one said. With a quick glance, she read his rank and name tag. He was a chief warrant officer named Hutchins. Pointing at the two others, he said,
This here's Tie Down, and this is Shrek. They call me T-Bar.
CW2 Hutchins, or T-Bar, looked like that goofy character in the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou movie. He even had the Appalachian accent. Lieutenant Tie-Down Horowitz was tall and thin, with a receding black hairline and a large, thin nose. Katie instantly saw why they called Lieutenant Miller Shrek. He was huge, at least 6'6" tall, with shoulders that were a meter wide and biceps like a normal man's thighs. To complete the image, his jawline resembled the animated character's face. Tie-Down said,
We heard that you're a pretty good pilot, but Dingle won't release you until you pass his local SOP test. That sucks. He held me up for a while, too. I feel your pain.
Yes, studying SOPs is so boring. I'd rather eat a bowl full of raw sea lion blubber than read that SOP one more time. Shrek said,
Wait. What? Sea lion blubber? Where are you from?
Katie immediately regretted letting her guard down, forgetting where she was and who she was talking to. These weren't her friends in Ketchikan. Her world was foreign to them. Oh, sorry, I'm from Southeast Alaska. T-Bar asked.
Did you eat blubber there? Are you an Eskimo?
Wanting to change the subject, she politely smiled at T-Bar, then turned back toward Tie-Down. Why did you say Dingle won't release me? Shrek said,
Dingle is Captain Barry's call sign. Think about it.
Oh, as the light of understanding dawned on her. They smirked at her innocent reaction. T-Bar continued,
We all got call signs. Most of us ain't real happy with what we got, but that's life, I reckon.
Tie-Down interrupted, saying,
Yeah, T-Bar stands for That Boy Ain't Right.
Katie tried unsuccessfully not to smile. She thought, that's rude but funny, and it fits. T-Bar continued,
In case you can't figure out how Tie-Down and Shrek got their names, Tie-Down once forgot to untie his rotor blades before starting his aircraft in flight school. Oops. As for Shrek, that needs no further explanation.
After sipping his coffee, he said,
Now, I'll bet you're wondering why we shared all this with you. Who's the only one at this table without a call sign?
All 6 eyeballs latched onto Katie's face, watching for her reaction. She maintained her poker face as she thought, I should have been rude and sat somewhere else. Seeing no visible reaction, T-Bar told the others.
She's not gonna bite.
He turned back to Katie.
We brainstormed it and came to a consensus for your call sign. We had some good ones, but the one that's the least likely to get us in trouble with the political correctness police is Polka. So, assuming you agree not to file a racial discrimination complaint, you're gonna be Polka.
I wonder what their other good ones were. Probably better not to ask. She responded, I'm not the type to file a discrimination complaint over such a thing. They all nodded in agreement. She sipped her mint tea. And besides, as a young girl, Pocahontas was one of my role models, so Polka isn't offensive to me. T-Bar said,
It's settled then.
Raising his water glass, he proclaimed,
I christen thee Polka. Welcome to the team.
The others raised their glasses, saying, Hear, hear, in unison. Shortly afterward, the 3 left, leaving Polka to eat her lukewarm dinner. Chapter 4. The Narrow Path. Counting the Cost. Forward Operating Base Freedom, Kyrgyzstan, January 1st, 0800 hours. Katie sat alone in the squadron mess hall, enjoying a bagel with lox, toast, and coffee when Lieutenant Tie-Down Horowitz barged in, slamming the door against its stop. He immediately saw her and came straight to her table.
Polka, we've got a mission to fly. Leave your tray and let's go.
What? I'm not released yet.
I know. I just woke Dingle up. He said that if there wasn't anyone else available, I'd have to take you.
As they hurried to get their flight gear, Tie-Down explained.
T-Bar and me were on standby this morning in case any medevac calls came in. But T-Bar ate something that didn't agree with him, so now his hiney is glued to the toilet. After last night's New Year's Eve party, you're the only other pilot sober enough to fill my co-pilot seat.
As they hurried to the helicopter, she asked, "What's the mission?"
Some Green Berets working with a Kyrgyz village got ambushed in the Tanger Valley. Tanger's an enemy-controlled area, so we'll have 2 Apache gunships to escort us. I've got the Green Berets' location coordinates and contact frequency, but that's all I know so far.
At the aircraft, Tie-Down quickly briefed their 3 crew members, a flight medic and 2 crew chiefs, about the mission. He concluded with,
Miss Whitefeather's still in training. Chief Hutchins is sick, and she's the only co-pilot available, so cut her some slack, okay?
The crew chief nodded, mumbling, "Yes, sir." The medic rolled his eyes and gave a thumbs up. Katie felt a rush of adrenaline as she strapped into the co-pilot seat. She'd followed Uncle Andy's example, taking advantage of the Army's high school to flight school program. Now, after 2 years of training to become an Army warrant officer and medevac helicopter pilot, she was finally going on an actual mission. While the crew chief stood in front of the Black Hawk, holding a fire extinguisher and facing the pilots, Katie observed Tie-Down going through the H-60 Black Hawk's startup checklist from memory. She thought, "We're not in flight school anymore. They'd never let us do anything without reading from a checklist." Tie-Down shouted,
Clear!
out his window. The crew chief standing outside gave him a thumbs up, and Tie-Down pressed the starter button. Katie felt the aircraft come alive as its engines, drive shafts, and rotors spooled up, each component with a distinct sound and vibration. Cumulatively, they were like an orchestra, all harmonizing together in a unified symphony. As Tie-Down quickly switched on radios and navigation avionics, each one added to the symphony inside her helmet. She heard the base ground controller clearing pilots to taxi, the current weather information broadcasting in a repetitive loop, and the constant background hums of their GPS, inertial navigation system, and automatic direction finder. When both engines safely reached idle RPM, the crew chief climbed aboard and stowed the fire extinguisher. A motion in her left peripheral vision caught her attention. She looked over to see Tie-Down privately kiss a cross pendant, then replace it under his t-shirt. He handed Katie a 3x5 card with the soldier's coordinates and contact frequency. Over the intercom, he said,
Plug these in, please.
While Katie worked on entering the Green Berets' coordinates into the Black Hawk's GPS and INS, Tie-Down talked to the Apache pilots on the UHF radio. Tie-Down transmitted,
Viper 3-1, Dustoff 2-3. You ready?
After getting clearance to taxi, all 3 copters met at a helipad, took off, then flew in a loose formation at their maximum speed of 150 knots to rescue the wounded Green Berets. During a lull in the 20-minute flight, Katie said, "I thought your call sign was Tie-Down, but you're using Dustoff 2-3.
Yeah, for security reasons we don't use our personal call signs on the radio. Ever since Vietnam, Army medevacs have used the Dustoff call sign. I'm Dustoff 2-3. You'll get your Dustoff call sign when Dingle releases you.
Yeah, my uncle was a Dustoff pilot in Vietnam.
Cool. You'll have to tell me about his experiences when we get back.
At 10 miles from the LZ, Tie-Down switched his transmitter selector switch from UHF to FM to call the Green Berets on the ground. Dallas 6, this is Dustoff 2-3. Is the LZ cold?
Dustoff 2-3, Dallas 6, we have 2 packs. LZ is secure and quiet.
So they've got 2 wounded soldiers and the landing zone is secure.
Roger, we're 3 minutes out. Pop smoke.
10 seconds later, Katie saw red smoke billowing on the ground ahead. Tie-Down said,
Dallas 6, verify red smoke.
Dustoff 2-3, that's affirmative. Red smoke.
On the intercom, he told Katie,
We always verify the smoke color in case the bad guys try to lure us into a trap with their smoke grenade.
Tie-Down rushed his approach to get on the ground quickly. During the last 50 feet, the Black Hawk's rotor wash kicked up enough snow to partially block their view of the ground. She felt the Black Hawk's tailwheel hit the ground harder than normal. Then tie down quickly but smoothly lowered the collective pitch control to bring the aircraft down solidly on its front wheels. With all 3 wheels on the ground, he engaged the parking brake to keep the helicopter from rolling while they loaded the wounded soldiers. Wow, she thought. They don't teach you to land like that in flight school. The moment the main wheels touched down, the flight medic slid the left cargo door open and jumped out to receive the 2 patients. The 2 crew chiefs stood ready on the Black Hawk's machine guns, one on each side of the aircraft, scanning for any enemy. As the snow around them settled, Katie watched soldiers hurriedly carrying 2 stretchers toward the aircraft's left side. Her first sign something was wrong was when she saw the stretcher bearers sporadically ducking in jerky motions. Do they hear someone shooting at them? Katie couldn't hear any gunfire from inside the helicopter, and Tie-Down didn't look concerned, so she sensed no immediate danger. This is getting interesting. Tie-Down switched his transmitter selector from FM to UHF, then calmly said,
Viper 3-1, we're taking sniper fire from the tree line 100 meters west of our position.
Roger. Viper 3-1 is inbound. Weapons hot.
Katie heard a loud noise behind her. She turned to see the first stretcher sliding onto the cargo floor. The wounded soldier's mangled leg was missing below the knee. There was a tourniquet above the stump. Katie thought, that tourniquet saved the soldier from bleeding to death. The flight medic jumped in and started attending to the man, hanging an intravenous IV drip bag from the cargo compartment's ceiling. Tie-Down saw her transfixed by the gory stump. He said,
Polka, after patients are loaded, a dust-off pilot's rule number 1 is, don't look behind you. Some things you'll see can mess with your head. Focus your attention forward so you can fly them back as quickly and safely as possible.
She nodded her agreement. Katie felt something like a 5.0 earthquake shaking their aircraft. Then she heard 6 explosions and felt their concussions in rapid succession. In the tree line to their west, Katie saw plumes of black and gray smoke rising and large pieces of trees and foliage falling back to the ground. 5 seconds later, an Apache gunship passed overhead. Then it banked hard to the right to turn back in the opposite direction.
Viper 3-1 is outbound.
Roger, Viper 3-2 is inbound.
The 2 Apaches flew at opposite ends of a racetrack oval pattern. As soon as one turned away, the other turned toward the target. 10 seconds later, Katie felt, heard, and saw another series of explosions in the tree line. Then she saw the second gunship fly overhead.
Viper 3-2 is outbound.
The lead gunship pilot said,
Dust off 2-3. That should take care of the bad guys in the tree line.
Tie-Down responded,
Roger that, Viper. Good shooting.
50 meters directly in front of her, a movement caught Katie's eye. She focused in terror as a Kyrgyz man stood up with a large tube balanced on his right shoulder. It's a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, and he's aiming it right at us. She keyed the intercom and yelled, RPG ahead! Then she saw the flash of the rocket's exhaust. 1 second later, the RPG warhead exploded into her helicopter's cockpit. Blasted into unconsciousness, she heard what sounded like a grand piano crashing down from a 10th-story apartment onto a concrete sidewalk, all 88 keys pounding at once. She felt no pain and no sensations or awareness of the physical world at all. She didn't see, hear, or feel anything. But strangely, she was still completely self-aware. Am I dead? Is this what it's like to die? Am I now a spirit without my body? Ketchikan, Alaska, 1 month earlier, December 2nd. On a screen in her mind, Katie watched a replay of her last day with Uncle Andy. She piloted his bright yellow float plane down for a smooth landing, then water taxied toward his dock. As they slowly approached the dock, Andy jumped out. Standing on the plane's left float, he secured the plane to the dock with 2 ropes, fore and aft. Buster and Katie joined him. As the 3 walked up to Andy's waterfront cabin, he carried a heavy stringer of 4 18-inch Dolly Varden.
If you get the fire going, I'll prep the fish and vegetables.
That's a good deal for me.
Consider it your going-away present.
Katie arranged the kindling. Moments later, a roaring fire danced in the outdoor fire pit. As flames transformed logs into coals, Buster sat at her side. She petted his head while they both absorbed the fire's radiant warmth. Even though it was early December, the air was just cool, not yet cold, and a rare, deep blue sky reflected on the cove below Andy's cabin. Andy's bright yellow airplane contrasted against the evergreen mountainside on the opposing shoreline. I'm really going to miss this place. She consciously inhaled a long, deep breath of crisp, salty air as she savored the sights and feelings. Tomorrow, she thought, I'll be leaving these deep greens and blues and this cool, clean, salty air for landlocked Kyjiristan. Everything there will be the same shade of brown. But she was eager to get into the combat zone. She wanted to prove herself in battle, like her uncle Andy, who sewed his Vietnam medevac unit's patch on every new leather flight jacket he ever owned. She wanted to earn the same glory, the same respect, and the same reverence people showed to him in their town. In fact, she hoped to enjoy even more prestige than her uncle. He was a white male from the lower 48, so his combat exploits were not surprising to anyone in Ketchikan. In contrast, she was a Klinatok female, an orphan barely 20 years old, and her community had no such expectations for someone like her, especially with her history. She'd prove Auntie Ella wrong. She'd make her clan and her parents proud of her. During the last 2 years, while Katie was in Army training, most of her high school friends had already settled into an annual cycle of seasonal cannery jobs, cutting and gutting fish 12 hours a day for 6 months each year, then living on government assistance during the off-season. Half the girls in her class already had babies. A few were married. She was once on that path herself. Instead, she now had a promising career as a U.S. Army warrant officer helicopter pilot. She'd already shattered stereotypes among the native residents in Ketchikan. Andy carried a platter containing fish fillets, potatoes, sliced bell peppers, and onions, salt, pepper, butter, and 2 place settings. He set the platter on the table, laid the potatoes directly on the coals, then relaxed next to Buster and Katie. He looked pensive, like he wanted to say something but was holding back. When he saw steam coming from the potatoes, he turned them. With the potatoes half done, Katie moved the fish and vegetables from the platter onto the grill. She heard an eagle's call, then looked up to see a pair of bald eagles circling overhead. She thought, "They want our fillets." Katie said, "Be right back." She ran up to the cabin, with Buster following close behind. She returned with a plastic bag containing the 4 fish carcasses, each with its head, spine, and guts attached. Standing at the end of the dock, she flung them, one by one, onto the water's surface. As Katie stooped to rinse her hands in the cove, Andy said,
Eagle TV.
After returning to her chair, knowing this will be their last evening together for a long time, Katie asked, "Do you have any advice for me?" Looking down into the fire, he spoke.
You've been flying since you came here, so I know you'll have no problem flying anything they put you in. Piloting won't be a problem for you. My advice concerns situations you may find yourself in, especially flying medevac. In Vietnam, the enemy liked to use our wounded soldiers as bait. Everything would be quiet when we landed in the LZ. Then, as soon as we started loading our packs, they'd spring an ambush. Your instinct is to escape, fly out of the kill zone. But if you do, you'll be leaving wounded men behind. So, you might escape and save your life, but you'll be haunted forever by regret and shame.
She turned the fish and vegetables on the grill, then basted the fillets with melted butter and sprinkled everything with salt and pepper.
I hope you never find yourself in a situation like that. Because if you do, your natural impulse will be to pull pitch and get the heck out of there. In life, but especially in combat, you need to be mentally prepared for unexpected threats to your life.
But how can you mentally prepare for something unexpected?
Here's an example. After the Last Supper, Jesus told Peter he would deny him 3 times before the rooster crowed the next morning. Peter protested, saying he would never deny Jesus. In fact, he loudly bragged that he would die with Jesus before he would deny him. Peter was sincere when he said this, but he hadn't counted the cost. And so, after Jesus' arrest, when Peter was unexpectedly confronted by people who said they'd seen him with Jesus, Peter panicked and saved his own skin by denying 3 times that he knew Jesus. Then the rooster crowed. At that moment, Peter saw Jesus look directly at him. The Bible says Peter went out and wept bitterly, but it was too late. He had denied the Lord. After his resurrection, Jesus forgave and encouraged Peter. But Peter lived with the shame of this momentary failure for the rest of his life, until he himself was crucified for his faith decades later. So the key word is unexpected. Peter loved Jesus, and he was confident that he'd never deny him. But because he unexpectedly felt his life was being threatened, his self-preservation instinct overruled and overpowered his mind. He was caught off guard. He let fear take over, and he regretted it the rest of his life. We can learn from Peter's failure. We all need to count the cost and predetermine how we'll act if our life is unexpectedly threatened. Our self-preservation instinct is powerful, so you need to define your personal code of honor. What are you willing to die for?
She said, "Wow, that's heavy." The narrow path. She plated the fish and vegetables. As they enjoyed their feast, they watched the eagles make 2 trips each, swooping down to grasp all 4 hunks of fish in their talons and fly away.
The same principle that applies to deadly threats applies to your career and to your reputation. Compromise isn't always bad, but we all need to predetermine our boundaries, beyond which we won't compromise. Self-respect and a clean conscience are more important than anything the world system can give you. I feel like I'm dumping a truckload of advice on you, but this is my last chance before you leave tomorrow, so please let me get everything off my chest.
Katie said, "It's okay. I asked for it and I'm listening. What else?"
I want to talk about success. Wealth and rank are the world's metrics for success. This success is genuine, but it's temporary and short-sighted. In the afterlife, billionaires and presidents will have less status than today's homeless beggars. Remember the parable about the rich man and Lazarus? All worldly success will be burned up, but genuine success is measured by following the truth in every situation. Following the truth is not popular in this world, which is passing away, but it will always lead you closer to God's kingdom, which is glorious and eternal.
Katie said, "I plan to do both. I'll follow the truth, and hopefully I'll get promoted too." Katie saw Andy wince. He mulled over her statement as he added 3 logs onto the coals.
Katie, we're players in a bigger story, a spiritual battle between good and evil. And that's not just folklore. The spiritual realm and the battle there are actually more real than the physical realm we live in. We cannot see it, but we're involved in this war between God and the devil.
Katie nodded. She remembered the angel who visited her in Catan and the fragrant wildflower meadow he led her to. When her fillets cooled sufficiently, she shared a sizable piece of fish with Buster, who sat by her side. He gulped it straight down.
I'm going to quit beating around the bush and give it to you straight. Here's what I mean. You've got a good and tender heart, Katie, and flying with the Army has been a blessing for both of us. But the Army bureaucracy is part of Satan's world system, and we're members of God's kingdom. These 2 kingdoms are at war with each other, and none of us can be faithful to both. We all must choose. So eventually, the world's bureaucracy will test you to determine your loyalty. Will you compromise the truth and follow their philosophies and dictates like 99% of people do? Or will you walk the narrow path alone and follow the truth? When you're tested, no matter what the cost, I encourage you to follow my 2 simple rules.
Katie raised her hand like a schoolgirl. I know. Do everything as unto the Lord and choose to follow the truth in every situation.
That's my girl. High five.
They slapped palms up high. Staring into the fire, Andy said,
One last thing. You're young, female, beautiful, and clean to talk. You can't control what other people think or how they'll see you as different from them in some way. But if you follow these 2 rules, you'll always have self-respect and a clean conscience before God and men.
Looking into the fire, Katie nodded in agreement. Thanks, Uncle. I will. The screen in her mind faded to black. From far away, she heard men frantically shouting, but she couldn't understand them. Deep within her mind, Katie slowly became aware of the darkness surrounding her, as if she was in a windowless room with no light. The voices were getting closer. They were frantically shouting,
Wake up! Wake up!
She struggled to gather her wits and ascend out of the darkness. Finally, she gained control over her eyelids and willed them to open. She saw a crew chief, desperate in a cloud of gray smoke that filled the cockpit, frantically shaking her, yelling,
Wake up! Wake up!
The smell, like a rifle range when everyone shoots at the same time, filled the air. Along with the smoke and the smell, the noise of twin turbines, the vibrations of transmissions and rotors, chaos and fear filled the atmosphere. She felt a stabbing pain in her left arm, and the left side of her face felt strange, as if it was wet and open to the air. Dazed, she remembered the RPG, and she realized where she was and what had happened. As her mind cleared, she looked around to orient herself. In the left seat, she saw Tie-Down's mangled, bloody corpse. The left half of his head was gone. Blood, brains, and charred pieces of flesh splattered the inside of the cockpit. She remembered his last words to her. Rule number 1, don't look behind you. Some things you'll see can mess with your head. Focus your attention forward so you can fly them back as quickly and safely as possible. She averted her gaze forward toward her instrument panel.
If you're enjoying the Positive Apocalypse Trilogy, Book 1 is free as an ebook worldwide, or grab the complete Trilogy box set, all 3 books, one complete journey through the end times. Links in the description. Until next time, stand in faith.